ॐ विश्वन्दर्पण दृश्यमान नगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्गोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्रीपरमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ तपोभिः क्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्ष्योऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते. I welcome you all to the 19th class of the Atma Bodha series. We will read verses 40, 41 and 42 that we had completed in the last class and then proceed. Rupavarnadikam sarvam
रूपवर्णादिकं सर्वं
vihaya paramarthavit
विहाय परमार्थवित्
paripurnachidananda
परिपूर्णचिदानन्द
स्वरूपेणावतिष्ठते.
स्वरूपेणावतिष्ठते
ज्ञातृज्ञानज्ञेयभेदः
ज्ञातृज्ञानज्ञेयभेदः
परेणात्मनि विद्यते.
परेणात्मनि विद्यते
चिदानन्दैकरूपत्वात्
चिदानन्दैकरूपत्वाद्
दीप्यते स्वयमेव तत्.
दीप्यते स्वयमेव तत्
एवमात्मारणौ ध्यान
एवमात्मारणो ध्यान
मथने सततं कृते.
मथने सततं कृते
उदितावगतिज्वाला
उदितावगतिज्वाला
सर्वाज्ञानेऽधनं दहेत्.
सर्वाज्ञानेऽधनं दहेत्
In these verses, Bhagavad Pada is giving us the complete overview of the process of Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga comprises of Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. So I have to gain this Jnanam that Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha, which is the essence of the teaching. And when the student receives this message, the student says, Aham Satyam Jagan Mithya Aham Brahmaiva Naparaha. Or in other words, Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. That is the absolute reality. Brahman alone exists independently. I alone exist independently. The entire world that I see in front of me, including this body and mind, doesn't have an independent existence. It depends upon me for its existence. And therefore, as this Satyam Brahma, independently existing Satyam Brahma, I am utterly unaffected by anything that happens in this world or in this body-mind complex. This is the jnanam that I have to come to through Shravanam and Mananam. After this jnanam has been obtained through Shravanam and Mananam, as we said, the ignorance-based identification with the body and mind goes. But the habit-based identification with the body and mind can continue. Because for countless janmas, I have led lives in multiple life forms. And therefore, this Jīva Vasana is extremely strong. Jīva Vasana means this habitual thinking that I am this limited Jīva. That habitual thinking is extremely powerful. Therefore, even though this newfound knowledge has been attained, the mind doesn't change overnight, the habits don't change overnight. And therefore, one has to work on weakening the past habitual tendencies, Jiva Bhava Durbali Karanam and Brahma Bhava Prabali Karanam. This is what we refer to as Nididhyasanam. The mind has to soak in the teaching of Vedanta. The mind has to get acquainted to the new reality that I have found. And that takes time, and that is what we call Nididhyasanam, contemplation on the teachings of Vedanta. So this is the process of Jnana Yoga, comprising of Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. And Bhagavad is telling us the Jnana Yoga Phalam. What is the Phalam of this Jnana that is attained through Jnana Yoga? What is the Phalam of this assimilated Jnana that is attained through Jnana Yoga? So that is what Bhagavad is talking about in verse 40, 41, and 42. So here Bhagavad says, Avatishthate, meaning the Jnani abides in Brahman. But like we saw, every product effortlessly abides in its material cause. The ornaments effortlessly abide in its material cause, which is gold, in their material cause. Or the wave effortlessly abides in water, which is its material cause. So similarly, what is so special about abiding in Brahman? Because even an Ajnani abides in Brahman only, which is the material cause. So we say that abiding in Brahman really means abiding in the knowledge that I am Brahman. The Ajnani doesn't have this knowledge. The Jnani has this knowledge. That is the only difference. So now the question arises. So what does this abiding in knowledge mean? Does the Jnani have the knowledge in the mind? So here we point out that a jnani can also engage in vyavahara. Jnani is also engaged in the world. So the jnani looks at a pot. What is the vritti in the jnani's mind? Is it atmakara vritti or ghatakara vritti? When the jnani is looking at a pot, the vritti in his mind is the ghatakara vritti. It's a pot vritti. At that time, the atmakara vritti is not there. When a jnani, for example, is engaged in cutting vegetables, let's say he's cutting the okra or lady's finger, and jnanis can do these activities. It doesn't mean that once one has attained jnanam, doesn't mean that you should stop whatever you're doing earlier. That is not what Vedanta said. So jnani can continue to cut vegetables, eat food, etc. That the jnani used to do earlier. So if the jnani is cutting these ladies' fingers, and if the jnani cannot distinguish between the lady's fingers and his own fingers, then he'll end up chopping his own fingers in the process. So the vyavahara vritti has to be there in the jnani's mind when the jnani is engaging in vyavahara. This is what we point out as the difference between an upasaka and a jnani. An upasaka has to maintain this upasana vritti all the time. And if he loses that vritti, then the meditation is broken. The upasana is broken. Whereas a jnani has ascertained very clearly what my nature is. For example, once I know that I am a male, and I have absolutely no doubt about it, I don't have to constantly entertain this vritti, I am male in my mind all the time. When the context requires it, like if some form asks, what is your gender? Then I recollect that knowledge and I say that so and so is my gender, right? So jnanam, if the jnanam is there, that doesn't mean that the jnana vritti has to be there in the mind all the time. And therefore, this vritti goes into the background, just like any other jnana goes into the background, and it is brought to the foreground when the context requires it. Similarly, when the jnani is engaged in vyavahara, the aham brahmasmi vritti is not there in the mind. But once the vyavahara ends, then the jnani goes back to contemplation. He has nothing else to do in the world. Or the jnani can deliberately engage in contemplation for a certain period of time in order to enjoy the reflected ananda, the reflected ananda that is born of this jnana, that is called jnanananda. By contemplating on this jnanam, the jnani can gain reflected ananda, happiness, experiential happiness. And therefore, for that purpose also, the jnani can deliberately engage in nididhyasana. And therefore, abiding in knowledge doesn't mean that this vritti has to be there in the mind all the time. And especially, as we said, during critical situations, in difficult situations, in crisis situations, the jnani never forgets this. Jnanasya avismritihi eva jnananishtha, like we saw. The non-forgetfulness of this jnana. If one has not done enough nididhyasana, then the habitual tendencies can take over in times of crisis. But for a jnani who has nishtha in this jnanam, even in the most difficult of situations, this jnanam is not forgotten. That is what we call jnana nishtha. So this jnani gains nishtha, avatishthate. And how does he gain nishtha? He is a paramarthavit, meaning one who knows Brahman. Paramarthavit, as we saw, means Brahmavit. He knows Brahman. And how does he know Brahman? As I am Brahman. I am the non-dual reality. And how does he arrive at this? As he says, Rupa Varnadikam Sarvam Vihaya, by giving up all the attributes, Rupa Varna, etc. And what does giving up of the attribute mean? Giving up of the attributes means seeing their mithyatvam, seeing that they are not real. They belong to mithya upadhis, not to me. And therefore, Paripurna Chidananda Swarupena Vatishtate, he abides as this limitless consciousness in the Jnanam that I am limitless consciousness. And as we saw in the next verse, every knowledge involves this triputi of knower, knowledge, and known. Now, Atma does not have this triputi. That's what the next verse is pointing out. Pare Atmani na vidyate. And as we saw, that Atma is not the limited knower, because the knower is always a mixture of Atma and Anatma. Knower is the reflected consciousness that arises when the Atma and Anatma come together. The Atma alone cannot know because the Atma is changeless. The Anatma mind alone cannot know because it is inert. So we require the Atma and the mind, Atma and Anatma, to come together for the knower to arise. And therefore, Atma by itself is not this knower also, not the Jnata. It is not the known, because as we have seen, the Drig is never the Drishyam. The Atma is never the Gneyam. And so also, Atma is not the Jnanam, because the Jnanam is this vritti that arises for a limited period of time and it goes. The vritti is anitya. Therefore, Atma is not the Jnanam also. But Atma is the adhishthanam of all these three. Atma is the support of all these three. Like we saw, without the screen, the movie cannot be there. The screen is not any of the characters in the movie. But without the screen, none of those characters can exist. For Atma is the support of the Triputi. Then how is Atma known? If it is not the known, not the Gneyam, then how is the Atma known? Well, we saw that Atma is self-evident, self-revealing. And therefore, Atma need not be objectified. Atma cannot be objectified as the known, but Atma need not be objectified as the known in order to know the Atma. I know that I am without objectification. So, what about the vrittis? So, what about the vrittis? Why do we say the vritti is required? As we have seen, the vritti is required not to illuminate the Atma, not to objectify the Atma, but to negate all the anatmas that I have superimposed on the Atma. To do the negation, the vrittis are required. And what about the aham brahmasmi vritti? Isn't that objectifying the Atma? We say, look at what the aham brahmasmi vritti is comprised of. I say aham, and aham means I is the subject, never the object. Always the subject, never the object. And similarly, Brahman, I'm saying I am Brahman. In that vritti, I am not objectifying Brahman, because if Brahman is objectified, Brahman becomes limited. Therefore, even in that vritti, I am knowing that I am Brahman without objectifying Brahman. And what is Brahman? Brahman is limitless. Brahman doesn't have any of these limitations of space, time, or object. And therefore, In that vritti, I am negating all the limitations that I have superimposed upon myself. Limitations of space, time, and object. And therefore, Aham Brahmasmi vritti is essentially saying, I am limitless, I am free of limitations. That's also negating all these limitations that are superimposed. Limitations of space, time, and object. And therefore, I can say that I am all pervading, I am imperishable, and I am the only non dual, secondless reality. And then in the next verse, Bhagavad is comparing this entire process of Jnana Yoga, the rise of Jnanam, to the rise, to this creation of the ritual fire in a Vedika ritual. So as we saw in the Vedika karma, before the yaga, the Ritvik takes two blocks, takes two pieces of wood. One is a lower piece of wood, and the other is a rod. And the lower piece of wood has a scoop, and the rod is inserted into the scoop of the hole. And then he churns the rod. And during this, friction is created, which produces sparks. And then those sparks are converted into fire, into a flame, by keeping some dry cotton or dry grass nearby. And then once the flame appears, it is transferred to the Homa Kunda, where the fire then consumes all the oblations that are offered into it. So this is the example. And as we saw, what is the lower arani? What is this lower block of wood? It has to be steady. The lower block of wood cannot be moving all the time, because if it's unsteady, then it's not possible to do this churning. And therefore, the lower block of wood is compared to the student's mind. The student's mind has to be qualified for Jnana Yoga. The student's mind has to be steady. And therefore, the lower arani is the student's mind. And into that, the Guru inserts the upper arani, the upper rod of wood, which is equivalent to the Vedanta Vakyas, to the Mahavakyas. So once these Vakyas are inserted into the student's mind, then the Guru does this churning, figurative churning of these Vakyas, the Mahavakya in the student's mind. And this churning means extracting the meaning of these sentences. And then when this churning is done in the form of extraction of the meanings, then sparks of knowledge arise in the student's mind. At first it is unsteady. There are glimpses the student gets of this, but then it is unsteady. But then as this process is continued, just like the steady flame arises, the student, through the Shravanam and Mananam and Nididhyasanam, finally the steady flame of knowledge arises in the student's mind. And what does this fire of knowledge do? It consumes the oblations. And what are the oblations that are offered into this fire? It is one's own ignorance. Sarva jnane dhanandahet, and the products of ignorance. The ignorance is consumed by this fire. And what are the products of ignorance? All these superimpositions. Ahamkara, mamakara, kartrutvam, bhoktrutvam, pramatritvam. And all of these products of ignorance, like worry, fear, anxiety, all of these are oblations that are offered into this fire. And as we have seen, Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute, he Arjuna. So even the karmas are offered as oblations. Sanchita karma is destroyed. Agami karma is avoided, and prarabdha karma is falsified. And therefore, one claims that as all of these products of Maya and Maya, they are burnt in this Agni by seeing their mithyatva. And one claims that I am the Satyam Brahma, that is Nitya Muktaha. That is, that was never bound in order to be liberated. I am the Satyam Brahma, that is utterly unaffected by everything that is Mithya. And everything other than me happens to be Mithya. Therefore, moksha is my very swarupa. So this is the culmination of the process of Jnana Yoga. We'll continue with verse 43. अरुणेनेव बोधेन
अरुणेनेव बोधेन
पूर्वं सन्तमसे हृते
पूर्वं सन्तमसे हृते
तत आविर्भवेदात्मा
तत आविर्भवेत् आत्मा
स्वयमेवांशुमानिव.
स्वयमेवांशुमानिव.
In the prior verse, we said that ignorance and all of its products are consumed by this fire of knowledge, by the Jnana Agni. So a question can arise, but you have just talked about the destruction of ignorance and its products. How is the Atma known? So is anything else needed after the destruction of the of all of these products of Anatma in order to know the Atma? Is there anything else required? So this question has been discussed before also in Atma Bodha, but Bhagavad Pada is just reiterating some key points. As we said, repetition is not a dosha in Vedanta. Repetition is there for a certain emphasis, and certain points have to be repeatedly emphasized, because this is what we talk about immersion in the jnanam. It doesn't mean learning something new with everything, but it can be a repetition of what has been seen before, because that is how one counters the habitual tendencies. Therefore, Bhagavad Pada is pointing out here that nothing else is needed. And why is that? So as we have seen, in order to know anything, how do we know anything in this world? For example, if we take a pot, how do I know the pot? So as we said, the pot is an inert entity. It is Jadavastu, and it is concealed by ignorance. It is concealed by a layer of ignorance, figuratively speaking. So now, in order to know the pot, it has to be contacted by consciousness. Anything has to be contacted by consciousness for it to be known. Now, the vrittis in my mind that rise in my mind, they are automatically imbued with the reflection of consciousness. And therefore, the vrittis in my mind are automatically known. I don't need another vritti to know the first vritti. But an object like a pot that is external to the mind, that is concealed by ignorance, and therefore that ignorance has to be removed for the pot to be known. And how is the ignorance removed? It has to be contacted by consciousness. It has to be contacted by the mind. And therefore the vritti in the mind has to go out and contact the pot. Through the eyes it goes out and contacts the pot. And it takes the form of the pot. And this is what we call the ghatakara vritti. And as we have seen, we call this vritti vyaptihi. So through the vritti vyaptihi, the ignorance of the pot is removed. Vishaya avarana nivrittihi happens. But then there is a second thing that also happens, that vritti carries the reflection of consciousness along with it. And therefore the reflection of consciousness also pervades the pot. This is what we call phala-vyaptihi. So now the pot shines with reflected consciousness. So as we have seen, Nirakara Chaitanyam, Chaitanyam is formless. That Nirakara Chaitanyam, when it's associated with the Ghatakara Vritti, then in the Ghatakara Vritti there is reflected consciousness. And therefore there is Ghatakara Chaitanyam. Ghatakara Chaitanyam, that's what we call pot consciousness or pot knowledge. So for pot knowledge to take place, we have these two processes of vritti vyaptihi and phala vyaptihi, through which there is ghatakara chaitanyam or pot knowledge takes place. So now the question is, how do I know the Atma? How do I know the Atma? Are these two processes involved? So as we have seen, the Atma kara vritti is required. Atma kara vritti is required. Does the Atmakara Vritti do both of these things is the question. Well, we have said that Atma, the true nature of Atma, the Brahman nature of Atma is concealed by the Avarana Shakti of Maya. So when this Vritti arises in the mind, the Vritti Vyapti is there in order to remove the ignorance, in order to remove the Avarana Shakti of Maya. This vritti is the Aham Brahmasmi vritti. Through this I know that I am Brahman, and therefore the Avarana Shakti of Maya that was concealing the fact that I am Brahman, that Avarana Shakti of Maya is removed. Now, does this vritti need to illumine the Atma? That is the question. Is phala vyapti also required? As we have pointed out, that Atma, being of the nature of consciousness, doesn't need to be contacted by consciousness for it to be known, for it to be illumined. The vritti carries the reflected consciousness, but the reflected consciousness is not required to illumine the original consciousness, much like if I have a mirror in front of the sun. Then the mirror can be used, that patch of light can be directed to other objects, and they become brighter than what they were. But that patch of light is not required to illumine the sun, because the sun is of the nature of light. So similarly, the reflected consciousness in the Aham Brahmasmi vritti, in the Atmakara vritti, has no role to play in terms of illumining the Atma. Just the ignorance, removal of ignorance is enough. Once the ignorance is removed, Atma is self-revealing, self-evident. So that is what Bhagavad Pada is saying in this verse. Aruneneva bodhena purvan santamase hrute. So Arunena iva, Bhagavad Pada is giving an example of dawn followed by sunrise. So Aruna refers to this early light of the sun, this dawn. The dawn is Aruna. So Arunena iva, just like by the light during dawn. Purvam, first, initially. Santamase hrute refers to this intense darkness of night. So Santamase hrute means that when this dense darkness of night is removed initially by this dawn. And tataha, meaning afterwards, after that. Avirbhavet. Avirbhavet means it appears. What appears? In this case, in the example, we should take it as Anshuman. Anshuman Avirbhavet. Means the sun appears. Anshuhu means the rays. Anshuman means the one who has the rays. Who has the rays of light. So that means the sun. So Avirbhavet, here in this context, we should take Anshuman Avirbhavet. So initially the dense darkness of night, Santamase Krite, by what? Arunena iva. Arunena Purvan Santamase Hrite. By dawn, the intense darkness of night is removed. Tataha, thereafter, Swayameva Anshuman Avirbhava. By itself, the sun appears. No special effort is required to make the sun appear. So similarly, Bhagavad says, Bodhena. Bodhena means by the knowledge. Purvam, initially. Santamase hrite. When this dense darkness of ignorance is removed by the Aham Brahmasmi Vritti. Tataha, thereafter, Swayameva Atma Avirbhavat. By itself, the Atma appears. You don't have to do anything special after the removal of ignorance for the Atma to be illuminated or the Atma to be known. Therefore, in other words, we are saying that Vritti Vyaptihi is enough. Phala Vyaptihi is not required. The removal of ignorance is enough. There is nothing else that is required to be done after that. So this is the essence of this verse, Arune Neva Bodhena. So we'll move to the next verse. Just one point here. So this verse, it is better to read it completely instead of breaking it up into quarters as we normally do. So we will read the first line completely and then read the second line completely. And there's an alternative reading of this word which is more amenable to the reading in quarters like we normally do, and I will mention that also. Atma tu satatam praptopya praptavada vidyaya.
Atma tu satatam praptopya praptavada vidyaya.
Tannashe praptavad bhati swakanthabharanam yatha.
Tannashe praptavad bhati swakantabharanam yatha.
So the reason this verse is somewhat difficult to break up into quarters is that if we say Atma tu satatam praptaha and then we say apya praptavada vidyaya, that breaks the meter somewhat. On the other hand, there is an alternative reading which is there in the Tika. So that goes like Atma tu satatam praptaha Hyapraptavada vidyaya. So instead of api, there's a hi in the tika. And that makes it more amenable to the normal quarterization that we do. So here, Bhagavad is talking about the idea of praptasya praptihi, the accomplishment of the already accomplished. Here Bhagavad is saying bhati. Bhati. In the second line, if you see, Tannashe Praptavat Bhati. So Bhagavad says Bhati. That's the verb here. Bhati means appears to be. Appears to be. Or seems to be. So what appears to be? What seems to be? So he said Atma Bhati. That Atma is in the first word of the first line. So as we can see here in the verses, as opposed to the normal prose order, the words can be jumbled up. So a part of process of understanding the words involves unjumbling the order of the words into prose order, changing the verse order into prose order. That's what we call anvayaha. Anvayaha means changing the verse order into prose order. So what appears to be Atma Bhati? Atma appears to be. And what kind of Atma is it? Satatam Praptaha Api. So an Atma, so Satatam Praptaha means already attained. Atma tu Satatam Praptaha Api Bhati. So even though the Atma, so api means even though. Even though the Atma meaning the full, complete, limitless, Purnaha, I. The Atma that is Brahman. Even though the Atma that is the full, complete, limitless, Purnaha I is already attained. Praptaha api. Ati. It seems to be. So the sentence is incomplete. So what does it seem to be? What does it appear to be? That's the question. So he says, apraptavat. So in the first line, praptaha api apraptavat avidyaya. So Atma tu satatam praptaha api apraptavat bhati. So now we are getting a more complete sentence. Yeah, Atma, the full, complete, limitless I, even though it's already accomplished, it appears to be not accomplished. So why do I say it is not accomplished? Because if we ask anybody, he says, I am by no means full, I am by no means complete. I am a very limited being. I am deficient, wanting, inadequate. This is the judgment of everyone in general. And therefore, I have to become secure, I have to become happy, and for that, I have to engage in actions in the world. Bottom line, I am apurnaha. This is why we say that Atma, even though it is praptaha, it is accomplished, it appears to be not accomplished. And then this Purna, I begin to seek Purnatva. I have to become full, complete, limitless by engaging in this world. And then one gets entrapped in this endless struggle called samsara, the endless struggle for fulfillment through the pursuit of the first three purusharthas. So the question now is that even though Atma is praptaha, already attained, this full, complete, limitless I, even though it's already attained, it appears to be not attained. Why is it so? So he says, avidyaya, because of self-ignorance. Atma tu satatam praptaha api apraptavat bhati avidyaya, because of self-ignorance. So there is a distance that is created between what I am and what I want to become. There's a distance that is created. So this is similar to the distance between the dream individual and the waker. We see that the dream individual is suffering in the dream. On the other hand, there is the ever liberated waker who is right there. So the distance between the dream individual and the ever liberated waker, if we look at it, right? So just imagine that the dream individual travels all over the dream, does various things in the dream in order to become this ever liberated waker. Can the dream individual become this ever liberated waker by doing various things in the dream? What is really separating the dream individual from the ever liberated waker is the sleep. So if you remove the sleep, then the dream individual finds that I am the ever liberated waker. I always was the ever liberated waker. He reaches the ever liberated waker by removing the sleep. So similarly, we take the example of the 10th man. The 10th man goes in search of the 10th man and does various things, looks in the forest, looks everywhere, collects a search party, does all of that. So he searches everywhere for the 10th man. But if we see what is the thing that is creating the distance between him and the 10th man, it is his self-ignorance alone. When that self-ignorance is removed, then he finds that I myself am the 10th man. I always was the 10th man. And he figuratively reaches the 10th man. So in these examples, the common thing is that the seeker is the sought. The distance between the seeker and the sought is created only by ignorance, by nothing else. So similarly, I, the Jīva, am already full, limitless, and complete being Brahman. But then this self-ignorance is there. I don't know who I am. And therefore, I seek to become full, limitless, and complete. Due to what? Avidya, due to this ignorance. So self-ignorance alone creates the distance. Therefore, Bhagavad-pada says, Tannashe. Tannashe means avidya nashe, when this avidya is destroyed. So as we have seen, if the distance is created in space, due to space, for example, if I have to attain Kailasha Manasarovar, if I have to attain that place, that is separated by space. Therefore, I have to travel in order to remove the space separation. Or in some cases, if I have to attain a certain benefit that I can get only if I turn 60, some post-retirement benefit, let us say, then there is no option. There is a separation in time. So there is no option but to wait for that time to come. So in some cases, attainments can be done by traveling. In other cases, attainments can be done by just waiting. But in this case, the seeker is already the sought. There is no separation in terms of space or time. In fact, I am what I am seeking, that full, complete, limitless Atma. I am here and now. There is no separation in space, no separation in time. The distance is purely caused by ignorance. And therefore, this distance can be removed only by the removal of ignorance. Therefore, tannashe, avidya nashe. So this is Sati Saptami again, meaning tannashe sati, meaning when this ignorance is destroyed. So how is the ignorance removed? So as we have seen that traveling, right? So one may go on various pilgrimages, etc. But pilgrimages, we say, cannot destroy this ignorance directly. Pilgrimages, etc., they are of great value in providing chitta shuddhi. But the pilgrimages themselves cannot destroy this ignorance. Or as we saw, if there is a separation in time, one can wait. But then, as we have seen, waiting cannot destroy this ignorance. Because everything else in this creation has a date of birth and a date of expiry. But ignorance doesn't have any natural date of expiry. So even the toughest rock can be eroded by the winds. Even the biggest galaxy can go away. It naturally comes and it goes naturally also. But ignorance survives pralayam also, as we have seen. Karana Sharira survives pralayam also. Therefore, just waiting it out is not going to help. In this case, this ignorance has to be removed only through jnanam. Any ignorance is removed only through jnana. And therefore, if one has to remove this ignorance, one needs Vedanta Shravanam Mananam. The Mahavakya Shravanam Mananam is required in order to remove this ignorance. Vedanta Shravanam Mananam gives rise to this fire of knowledge that consumes this oblation of ignorance. And then it destroys the separation due to this ignorance. So Tannashe means Vidyaya. Vidyaya Nashe Sati means when this ignorance is removed by Jnanam, that is obtained through Vedanta Shravanam and Mananam, through Mahavakya Shravanam Mananam. Then what happens? Praptavat Bhati. Praptavat Bhati. So the full, limitless, complete, Purnaha Atma that was already accomplished is as though accomplished. Praptavat Bhati. So why do we say as though? Because the seeker is the sought. As we have seen, the seeker was always the sought. The seeker just did not know that he himself was what he was seeking. So there is no question here of the seeker and the sought coming towards each other. For example, a lot of these movies, right? They say that if a couple has been separated, or if these twins lost at birth have been separated, then in the climax scene or towards the climax scene, you see both of them running towards each other in slow motion and finally embracing. So in this case, there is no such thing that happens. You are not attaining something different from you. I am attaining myself. The real me is being attained. But the real me was always there. I just did not know it. So the real me is as though attained. The already attained is as though attained. This is praptasya praptihi. The attainment is only due to knowledge. Even the loss was due to ignorance only. The attainment is also due to knowledge only. There is no other attainment. It's an as though loss followed by an as though attainment. And Bhagavad gives the example of Swakantha Bharanam Yatha. So this is one of our favorite examples that we have seen many times, and it is there. It is from Atma Bodha that we get this example, and it is there in various other Vedantic texts also. The lady with the necklace. The lady gets up in the morning, and somehow the necklace has shifted to the back of her neck. The lady gets up and then thinks that the necklace is lost. And therefore, she embarks on the search for the necklace. She looks for it in the kitchen, she looks for it underneath the bed, she looks for it in the bathroom, she looks for it everywhere. So it's a strange situation that the lady with the necklace is seeking to become the lady with the necklace that she already is. So it's an invalid seeking, it's an invalid search. And the invalid search can only end with the knowledge that I am already what I am seeking to become. The search itself is invalid. There is really nothing to accomplish because what I am seeking to accomplish is already accomplished. So similarly, the Jīva, who is already Purnaha, full, complete, limitless, Purnaha, is seeking to become full, complete, limitless, Purnaha even though what he is seeking to become is already attained. So the distance is caused only by ignorance. There is no other distance. And therefore, the removal of this ignorance alone, in fact, by any other thing that Jiva gets, the ignorance will never go. Whatever he accomplishes, he will always say that I am still incomplete, I am still limited. Just like decorating the broomstick, whatever he does in this world, it is not going to lead to this Purnatvam that he is seeking. The distance is caused by ignorance, and therefore the distance can only be removed by knowledge. And once this knowledge is removed, it is an as though accomplishment. Praptasya praptihi. We'll go to the next verse. Sthanau purushavat bhrantya
स्थानौ पुरुषवत् भ्रान्त्या
कृता ब्रह्मणि जीवता
कृता ब्रह्मणि जीवता
जीवस्य तात्विके रूपे
जीवस्य तात्विके रूपे
तस्मिन् दृष्टे निवर्तते.
तस्मिन् दृष्टे निवर्तते.
Here, Bhagavad Pada is again emphasizing the removal of ignorance, which is followed by the removal of all the superimpositions. In one stroke, it happens. Removal of ignorance and all the superimpositions. So Bhagavad Pada is giving an example. Normally we take the example of the rope snake. But here Bhagavad Pada is giving a different example of Sthanu Purushavat. The example of a stump of a tree, which is called Sthanu. Let's imagine that a tree that is about this size, right? Which was a tall tree, it has been cut down. And now it's about 5 feet 5 feet 5 inches tall, or around that height. And the tree is still alive. And therefore, it now grows a few branches. And so it grows these two branches which are like this. And then at the end of the branches, some new shoots have come out, some new leaves have come out. So at the end of the branches, there are some leaves hanging. So from a distance, it appears like a person is standing with fingers on the hands. And then these fingers also, these leaves tend to move in the wind. So now let's imagine that a person has just seen some scary movie of a ghost or involving a robbery with thieves, and now he's returning from the movie theater, and it's a midnight, it's a kind of a late night show. So from a distance, he's approaching the stump of a tree, and there's already all these scary thoughts in his mind, and now he sees this from a distance. And as we say that the samanya jnanam is there, he sees something is there. The Vishesha Jnanam, that it's the stump of a tree, is not there. So now he immediately superimposes a Purusha. That's why he says Sthanu Purushavat. So in the Sthanu, he superimposes a person there, a Purusha. And it's not just a Purusha, a Choraha, meaning a robber, he superimposes on that. And now he has all these after effects of that superimposition, the side effects of that superimposition, which are basically bhaya, fear, chinta, worry, and palpitation. So all of these things are going on in his body and mind. So now, what is the solution? So all of this is there because the stump of the tree has been wrongly understood. Stump of the tree has been wrongly understood. Because he's seeing the thief. So what is the solution? Can we say take a stick and drive away the thief? Or collect a crowd and drive away the thief? There's nobody around, by the way. He's alone. So he can either try to attack the thief and drive away the thief. He can do those things. But as we have seen, the final solution is to take a torchlight and see that there is no thief at all. That is figuratively driving the thief away. So similarly, here Bhagavad-pada says, Nivartate, sthano purushavad, nivartate. Nivartate means it is removed. What is removed? Jīvata. So in the first line we have Krita Brahmani Jīvata. So this Jīvata, this limited Jīva status, Nivartate, this limited Jīva status is removed. And where was this limited Jiva status? Just like this Purusha was in the sthanu, superimposed on the sthanu, on the stump of the tree. So where is this limited Jiva status? Brahmani Jivata Nivartate. In Brahman, this limited Jiva status is superimposed. So this limited Jiva status that is superimposed is removed. And what kind of limited Jiva status it is? Is it something inherent to Brahman? He says Krita Jivata. It is a superimposed status. It is not inherent in Brahman. Just like this Purusha, this Choraha that is superimposed on the sthanu, on the stump of the tree, is not inherent to the tree. It is something that is superimposed there. And why is it superimposed? Bhrantya. Krita Brahmani Jivata. Bhrantya Krita Brahmani Jivata. It is superimposed due to ignorance. We said, I have the Samanya Jnanam that I am. But I lack the Vishesha Jnanam of who I am. That is the ignorance. The Vishesha Jnanam is not there. That is the ignorance. And therefore, this false status of Jivatvam, Jivata is superimposed upon myself, that is Brahman. And therefore, I start to say, I am this body, mind, sense complex. I am limited. I am mortal. I am deficient, wanting, inadequate. This is the Jivaka. This is the limited Jiva status. And now this has to be removed. So how is it removed? Just like we need the torchlight in case of the Purusha Sthanu example. He needs a torchlight to remove it. So here too, I need a torchlight. Why do I need the torchlight? In order to see what is really here. What is really here? Jīvasya tatvike rupe tasmin drishte nivartate. So by the way, there is another alternative reading here, which is there in the Tika, which is samyak drishte nivartate. So here it is tasmin drishte nivartate, there it is samyak drishte nivartate. Both are fine. So jīvasya tatvike rupe tasmin drishte nivartate or samyak drishte nivartate. When this is removed, when is this jivata removed? When the real nature of this jiva is understood. Jivasya tatvike rupe. What is the real nature of this jiva? When that is understood. Drishte. Samyak drishte means when it's very well understood, when it's very well seen. Tasmin drishte means it is seen, the Brahman nature of the jiva is seen. Then nivartate, the jiva status is removed. So in case of the sthanu purusha, I need a literal torchlight in order to shine on this. What is it? What is really here? I'm shining a torchlight. And what do I see? What is here? Only a stump of this tree. This purusha, this choraha was my superimposition. It is not really there at all. So similarly here, I need the torchlight. What is the torchlight that I use? Is the torchlight the Mahavakya. with the torchlight of the Mahavakya, I know that what is really here is not the Jīva at all, it is Brahman. Eka, aparoksha, aparichinna, Brahm Atma alone is really here. I come to this knowledge that I am Brahman. I am not this Jīva, but I am Brahman. I had mistaken myself to be the Jīva because I had superimposed the attributes belonging to the mithya upadhis upon the adhishthan. The adhishthanam is free of these mithya upadhis and their attributes. As we had seen in another shloka in Atma Bodha, Naham Jivaha Paratmeti. I am not this Jiva, I am the Paratma. This is the understanding that I come to with the torchlight of the Mahavakya. Just like in case of the Sthanuhu, when I see that what is really there is the Sthanuhu, then the Purusha status gets displaced, it gets removed. Similarly, when I see that I am really this Eka Aparoksha Aparichinna Brahma Atma, I am this Advaita Atma, then this Jīva status is removed. Nivartate. Samyak drishte nivartate. Asmin drishte nivartate. We'll continue with the next verse. Tattvasvarupānubhavāt.
तत्त्वस्वरूपानुभवात्
Utpannam jnanamanjasa.
उत्पन्नं ज्ञानमञ्जसा
Aham mameti cha jnanam.
अहं ममेति चाज्ञानम्
Bādhate digbhramaदिवत्.
बाधते दिग्भ्रमादिवत्.
So here Bhagavad-pada is again continuing the removal, the theme, the topic of the removal of the ignorance and superimpositions. So here Bhagavad-pada is pointing out a finer point. And if we take any of these superimposition examples, it can be the rope snake or this Thanu Purusha, the stump thief example. Then, if we go to the rope snake example, then the rope knowledge, the knowledge that what is here is really a rope. What does it really do? It does only one thing. It removes the rope ignorance. That's all. Now, the rope ignorance is really the one that is responsible for the superimposition of the snake. So the rope knowledge directly only removes one thing, which is the rope ignorance. And when the rope ignorance is removed, then the superimposition of the snake gets removed. So the rope knowledge indirectly removes the snake superimposition. So rope knowledge removes the rope ignorance. The removal of the rope ignorance removes the snake superimposition. So similarly, Atma Jnanam does only one thing. Atma Jnanam only removes the Atma Ajnanam. And Atma Ajnanam is responsible for the superimposition of the Apurnatvam and the subsequent samsara. So Atma Jnanam removes the Atma Ajnanam, and the removal of the Atma Ajnanam results in the collapse of the superimposition of the Apurnatvam and the resultant samsara. Like Swamiji gives the example that the Atma Ajnanam is like a carpet on which there is the stool of Apurnatvam, and on this stool there is some other statue, which is really the samsara. So if I pull the carpet, then everything on it collapses. The stool collapses and the statue also collapses. So similarly, Atma Jnanam only removes the Atma Ajnanam, and the removal of this Atma Ajnanam removes the superimposition of the apurnatvam and the subsequent samsara. So here Bhagavad is saying badhate. Badhate means it falsifies, removes. So what falsifies? What removes? So here in the first line there is jnanam. The jnanam badhate. The knowledge falsifies. Knowledge removes. And what kind of knowledge is it? He says utpannam jnanam. Utpannam jnanam means the knowledge that arises. Utpannam jnanam badhate. And how does this knowledge arise? It says tattva swarupanubhavat. Tattva swarupanubhavat utpannam jnanam badhate. Tattva swarupanubhavat. It arises through this tattva swarupanubhava. So here the word anubhava, we say, should not be translated literally as experience. So it is not the experience of this tattva swarupa through which this knowledge arises. Because we say this can be mistaken to be some special, extraordinary experience. So as we have said, the aim of Vedanta is not some special, extraordinary experience. The aim of Vedanta is not some extraordinary experience. The aim of Vedanta is the extraordinary knowledge that I, the ever-present I, self-evident I, am this extraordinary Brahman. In every ordinary experience, the self-evident I is the extraordinary, is that extraordinary Brahman. This is the knowledge that applies to every experience. So Anubhava here should be taken as this aparoksha jnanam, this direct knowledge that I am Brahman. And therefore, due to this understanding that I am Brahman, the knowledge that is born, this direct knowledge, aparoksha jnanam is what is referred to here by this tattva swarupanubhavat. And what does it and it removes, as we said, it removes the ajnanam and its effects. When does it remove that? It says anjasa. Anjasa means immediately, without any gap. Immediately. Just like this moment, this light is brought into a dark room, then the darkness and all of these products of darkness like confusion, where is this thing, where is that thing, etc. All of this tripping and falling, etc. All of that goes away when the light is brought in. Immediately it goes away. Anjasa. So similarly, tattva swarupanubhavat utpannam jnanam anjasa badhate. It removes immediately. And what all does it remove? Aham mameti cha jnanam. So first of all, it removes the ajnanam. Ajnanam, that is the cause. And the effects of this ajnanam, which are the karyam, both the karanam and the karyam. The ajnanam is the cause, and its effects are this aham and mama. Ahankara and mamakara. So ahankara is this notion that I am this limited body mind. This is ahankara. And once I get connected to this limited body mind, then I get connected to some other things in this world through this body mind. Like my family, my possessions, my profession. All of these I call mine. This is the mamakara. So ahankara is the effect of ajnanam. I get connected to this body mind, to some limited anatma, I get connected first. And as a result of that connection, I get connected to other things, other anatmas. These are the pancha anatmas Swamiji talks about. Body, mind, family, possessions, and profession. So the connection to this body and mind is the ahankara. I say, I am this body mind. That is the ahankara. And this family, possessions, profession, I say they are mine. This is the mamakara. So with this, when the ajnanam is removed, this ahankara gets naturally removed. Why? Because as this Atma, as we have seen, Atma is asanga. It has no connection to anything else at all because there is nothing else in the Paramarthika. From the Paramarthika drishti, the Atma alone is. I alone am. There is no second thing for me to get connected to. If at all there is a second thing, that is anatma, which is in the lower order of reality. There cannot be any connection between me, the Atma, in a higher order of reality, and anything else in a lower order of reality. And therefore, there cannot be a connection with this body and mind to begin with. There is no ahankara in Atma. If I claim my Atma status, then this ahankara cannot coexist with it. And once this connection with the body and the mind, anatma, is gone, then only through that connection I was connected to the family, possessions, and profession. Only through that I was saying that this is my family, these are my possessions, this is my profession. When this connection, this first connection with the body, mind itself is removed by this jnana, then how can I talk about the subsequent connection, which is mamaka? And therefore, aham mameti chagyanam padhate. All of this is removed. And Bhagavad Pada gives the example of Dik Brahmadivat. Let's take this situation where I am traveling and traveling without GPS. So all I have is some kind of this old-fashioned map. So earlier, when we used to go on, especially in India, there is not so much maps that are available. But in the US and some of these other countries, they have a map for everything. So if you say that I want to undertake this trip from let us say San Francisco to Seattle, then he will give you this thick book. This used to be the case 25 years ago, 30 years ago. They used to give you this thick book that you could then go page by page, and it would give you the map of every location, every road that you would go through. So anyway, these days all of those activities have become redundant, and people are saving a lot of paper, I suppose, by using GPS. But let's take the olden days when you did not have GPS, and even the olden days prior to this book technology, where you just had a piece of paper with some scribbles on it about the directions. So you are in some place, and now you have this confusion about where is north. So you have in your map, you have indicated north, etc. But then you just can't figure out which way north is. Or sometimes if you are a more traditional person, you may want to stop in your way and do Sandhya Vandanam, for example. En route, you want to do Sandhya Vandanam. And now it's covered by, the sky is covered by clouds, and you don't know which way to point, which direction to look and do the Sandhya Vandanam. And suddenly, in between the clouds, you see the morning sun. So now you have no confusion about where east is. So now you know for sure that east is this way. That's all you need. Right? So once this confusion about which way east is removed, then you now have no confusion about where north is. where south is, where west is. So just like with the removal of the confusion about east, or with the removal of the east ajnanam, all of these after effects, like where is north, where is south, where is west, all of these other confusions, they go away simultaneously. Dik brahmadivat. So similarly, when this ignorance of the Atma, the nature of the Atma is removed, then all the subsequent effects of that confusion, like the superimposition of this apurnatvam and the subsequent samsara, all of those go away. Dik brahmadivats. We'll conclude here and continue in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.